Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our board meeting of Wednesday, January 8th, 2020, our first board meeting of the 2020 year, a year of clear vision and sight. Oh, yeah, that's a groaner. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, and with that, we will get underway. First item on our agenda is the agenda approval. Are there any changes or additions? None? With that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Director Haim and seconded by Director Toporowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Adoption of the regular board minutes of December 11th, 2019. If we get a motion to approve. Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Toporowski. Any discussion? No omissions, changes, errors? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Thank you. This takes us to public input period. Good evening, Mr. Evans. I'll let you read your own address. The microphone's just tucked in behind.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Mr. Chair, on the agenda tonight, I see SR3 for water monitoring stations. And I would really like to see the board discuss this a bit and let the public know where some of these monitoring stations will be and who's going to carry out the monitoring. The Shawnigan Basin Society was out monitoring turbidity on the Shawnigan Creek system and the Van Horn system this afternoon. And we find that since the dumping of the soil at SIA, the turbidity has gone up substantially in the ephemeral stream, and the turbidity has gone up substantially going into Shawnigan Lake. The turbidity may not be toxic to some people, but sand is horrible for fingerlings and for the salmon, the coho, and they've just spawned, and we just don't need a whole pile of silt on top of salmon eggs or bothering fingerlings. So it would be nice to hear this discussed, if possible, at the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to give input this evening? Nobody else there? Just checking. Thanks, Mr. Evans. We'll move on. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item CR1 is the report and recommendations of the Special Community Services Committee meeting of December 11th.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got a broken button here, so it's hard to turn the mic on and off. So we have the recommendations as you see there. Director Acton, did you want to make any comment? This says from Director Acton, so see. No. So I move the recommendation. Moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item CR2 is the report and recommendation of the Cowichan Community Centre Commission meeting of December 12th, 2019.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Sebring. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CR3 is the report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of December 18th, 2019.
Director Morrison.
Would you like me to read it, Mr. Chair?
If you wish.
Sure. There are items 1 and 2 and 1.1, that development permit number DP19B02, and that's for PID 029813972 be issued. And 2, that staff notify the owner of Lot A Goldstream Heights PID 029813972 that an amenity contribution of $10,000 must be made to the Community Parks Capital Reserve Fund Area B, Shawnigan Lake, pursuant to Electoral Area B zoning bylaw number 985, 1986, section 7.3 sub C sub G. Minimum parcel size and amenity requirement for Goldstream Heights in order to subdivide. I move that item.
Thank you. That's been moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Acton. Discussion? Seeing none, this is electoral area directors only. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to staff reports. Item SR1 is the staff report from the Finance Division on the Cowichan Valley Regional District 2019 audit.
Thank you. We do have a recommendation that the Audit Planning Commission report as submitted by BDO Canada be received. Moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SR2 is a staff report from Development Services regarding the rezoning application for Cougarden Real Estate Timber West Forest 2 Limited. And the recommendation for consideration is 5 parts. 1, the third reading of CVRD bylaw number 4257 be rescinded, that the revised transfer agreements with Timber West for the creation and transfer of a utility lot to the CVRD be approved. 3, that the revised transfer agreement with Timber West for the creation and transfer of a park lot to the CVRD be approved. 4, that the CVRD bylaw 4257 not be considered for adoption until the following petitions have been received. And as outlined on the agenda, for A, for a drainage control area, and B, for Honeymoon Bay Fire Service Area. And 5, that a public hearing for CVRD bylaw 4257 be waived in favor of public notice.
It's been moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Oh, sorry, you gotta get your hand out. Director Nicholson.
Sorry, I'm just, why is the public hearing going to be waived?
Through to Mr. Tippett. I believe it was already had, and there was this was a cleanup of some process, I believe, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, you're correct. Essentially, the new information that was contained in this report is that one of the preconditions the board previously established in respect of this application couldn't be met. That is, free and clear titles unencumbered by easements and so forth. And so that's what the new information was. In fact, bylaw 4257 won't be changing whatsoever. Nevertheless, procedure under the Local Government Act requires us to re-advertise the hearing, or sorry, the notice, excuse me, instead of a hearing. And in that ad for the notice, it will state that the bylaw is exactly the same as the one that went to hearing last year.
Thank you. Now I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item SR3 is a staff report from Environmental Services Division regarding water monitoring station, and the recommendation for consideration is that the draft memorandum of agreement with the province of BC for water monitoring stations for a 5-year renewable term be approved substantially as outlined in the December 18th staff report. And 2, that the agreement with the province of BC for the installation of 2 observation wells in Jack Fleetwood Memorial Park be approved.
Thank you. Director Acton. Moving it. Do we have a seconder? Director Sebring, questions? I'll go first to Director Nicholson, then Director Wilson.
I was just wondering who's paying for this well installation?
I'll put that through to staff. I believe it's in the report. Oh, sorry, Ms. Miller. Happy New Year. I haven't seen you yet.
Happy New Year, everybody. The well installation and the cost of the monitoring equipment, as well as the ongoing monitoring costs, will be fully covered by the province of BC.
Thank you. And any follow-up? No? Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I understand it, we've chosen no sites for these 4 wells yet, have we?
Through to Ms. Miller.
Thank you. We're developing a regional hydrometric monitoring network as one of the priority projects under the new drinking water and watershed protection function. Because of the high degree of urgency with regards to information for the Cooks Isla, we've been working for a number of years now with the province on locating a well within the Cooks Isla system. This particular location is an optimum location. We coordinated with the province last year and the year before in the installation of 2 additional wells further away from the river that are in the provincial road right-of-way. And so the reason it's coming to you today is because this particular well will be on CVRD-owned land, and so there's a contract required for that installation. The installation of this well gives us almost a perfect set of information for that particular area. And as we move out for the rest of the region, these are the kinds of partnerships that we'll be looking at developing to give us robust information going forward.
Okay, yeah, follow up, please.
Follow up?
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is in relation to what Mr. Evans just said about the turbidity that's appearing down in Shawnigan Lake there. About a week or 10 days ago, there was a letter in the Times Colonist from Dr. Bernard Yearlink, who is very adept at researching and reporting on this sort of thing. That same letter has appeared in the Citizen newspaper today and backs up from 10 days ago what Mr. Evans is saying about the turbidity that is coming down from those landfill sites with earth still being dumped up there. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, and the siting of the wells is to find out if there is any way that either in this particular plan or in the future, we can look at doing something to monitor that turbidity or that kind of sediment. And I'm not sure what the science is, but if there's anything that can be done to monitor what's actually going on up there with the soil dumping that's still continuing.
Through to Ms. Miller.
Through the chair to the directors. Great question. There's a slight difference. This particular focus of this memorandum of agreement is with regards to understanding water quantity, not necessarily water quality, with the exception is in many of these sites we may also want to collect water quality information. We're in the midst of developing a similar memorandum with the Ministry of Environment and are in the process. We anticipate completion of the report within the next 2 months with the development of a regional water quality strategy and the development of specific water quality objectives for the region on a watershed by watershed basis. That would include a regular calendar for the development of both the baseline objectives, so that's setting kind of a standard, if you will, for each of the areas. Some areas are naturally very sediment rich, and some areas aren't. So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate objectives for each of the areas, and then develop it based on the level of development or activity within the watershed, having a specific calendar for the attainment, and that would be used, we hope, for the development of much more specific land use criteria. For example, North Cowichan is very interested in this because they'll be using it to inform their land use guidelines and development guidelines going forward. So,
Follow up?
Yeah, maybe a word of explanation here as well. And the reason that, again, I'm asking about this is that we know that salmon populations are being decimated by all sorts of things. The last thing we need is for another source of contamination killing the eggs at their source. And this is something which I feel does really need to be looked at from the whole regional point of view. But that's the only comment I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Acton and then Director Nicholson.
I just had a question because I've had a few members of the Kingburn community ask me about the well that was drilled there. Is that one of the ones that will be monitored under the same agreement?
Right now, there are two documents. One is what you might call a parent agreement, a memorandum of understanding, which really sets out our objectives, our joint objectives, and then there's separate contracts, if you will, for each of the specific sites in which we've got hardware. That particular well that you're speaking about was installed by the CVRD, by the utilities group, and we're currently working with the utilities group to identify existing wells that are appropriate for long-term strategic monitoring as opposed to putting expensive telemetry into random wells. And so we're looking at that one and negotiating with the water division in terms of the use of their wells.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thanks. I was just, I was interested in all the wells that we're monitoring in the Cook Island now. So there's these two new ones, and there's the one outside the hub. And then is that it, or is?
If I may, there's another few wells in what we're really speaking about is Aquifer 197, which is a very large aquifer. There are a number of additional monitoring wells within Aquifer 197, and so the other one is on the other side of the highway. And what we're trying to identify is the directionality of movement and the response time, particularly for the Cook Island system.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else on my speakers list. Has this been moved and seconded? It has, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bylaws. Item B1 is CVRD Bylaw 4206, Eagle Heights Sewer System Service Amendment Boundary Extension, Bylaw 2018 for adoption.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bylaws for Electoral Area Directors, BEA1 is CVRD Bylaw number 4257, Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2018 to be rescinded. Third reading to be rescinded.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Kuhn. This is subject of our earlier discussion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. I believe that takes us down to question period. I believe the input you gave us at the beginning was answered, because I had it on my list. I was going to ask, but I thought I heard the answers. Mr. Evans.
Yes, Mr. Chair, but the answers bring up more questions.
Well, I would invite you to engage with the directors impacted and staff on what maybe more details they can provide. But you can ask me, of course, but please do.
Mr. Chair, on the Cook Island watershed, it seems funny that BC government is has issued a license for bottling water, and water is being pumped out while farmers are going short on water, and one neighbor's well is going dry. It seems to me that when there's water restrictions, I just wonder if these bottling companies have to knock back on their production too in that watershed.
If you go at the end and say in that watershed, then it makes it a question. Was there a question there?
The question is, do these commercial water bottlers have to cut back because the farmers had to cut back during?
I'll answer. I understand what you're saying now. My understanding is that province regulates that, and we don't have any regulatory authority on that, so I would have to refer that question to the province. My understanding is that water bottling facilities are not regulated by the regional district. I am unsure if they have to comply with our regulations. From what I've heard about other water bottling facilities, it's managed by the province and is not impacted by our regulations. Yeah, I believe they got the water license from the province, but I will happily follow up with you and provide you a more detailed answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, on the monitoring, of these wells that are going to be set up, or are they just strictly for monitoring, or is the CVRD going to use these wells for water or use too?
It's for monitoring, to my understanding, based on the staff report.
Just
And I see nodding.
monitoring only?
Yeah, these are not for extraction, they're for monitoring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have a lot of turbidity and lead in the water up on Goldstream Heights. And we still have the CVRD allowing soil to be dumped in 2 contaminated sites. This seems wrong, very, very wrong. And the applications are in to get a permit from the CVRD to dump, but in the meantime, they are operating on a temporary permit. And this just seems silly to put, for the CVRD to allow 2 places up there, allow dumping on contaminated sites. Is there nothing that the CVRD can do about that?
I think I'd have to follow up. I don't believe that I have any information on that from tonight's agenda or from any background, so I'm happy to follow up with you offline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Seeing no one else in the gallery, I believe we're on to a motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Kuhn. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Did you want to?